Thank you and welcome to LinkedIn and YouTube and Twitter. This is Michael Wardy. I am Michael Wardy, Certified Financial Planner and Regional Director at Source Advisors. And welcome to Showcase Broadcast Studios, where we share insight, ideas. We invite guests and specialists and experts in their field just to talk and share anything and everything, I would say, Dr. Pat. Our audience and our subscribers learn more and understand what else is available to them in general. Today, I am excited again to welcome back Dr. Pat. Thank you as always. And I could say this now. Thank you as always for joining me again on our broadcast.
You know, in anything, right? In anything, a confused buyer doesn't buy. So if we have paralyzed will, which we certainly have experienced for the last year and a half, then what happens is we get stuck. And if we get stuck, there's no growth. And if you get stuck, you get, in Chinese medicine, they would call it stagnation. It's just like everything stagnates around you. Can't put your finger exactly on something, but you got to figure out, how do I take this and put this in so it makes sense, so I can piece that in the puzzle and it doesn't hold me emotionally so that I can, it's just a memory. It happened. There's nothing I can do about it. And how do you move forward so that you can have better results? I mean, that's my, I'm going to stick to that.
Okay. Good opener. So here's why, Dr. Pat, you've been on my show. This is the third time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like you're a regular, which I love.
I'm going to move in.
I think my wife would find the space, so we're good.
You're a sweetheart.
I'd like to just kind of go through a recap of what you've seen and talking with people and understanding what's taken place in the first half of 2021. We're in the second half of the year, which is exciting. The rain has stopped here in Chicago after having a couple of days about a week or so ago. But what have you seen, experienced, people that you talk with in terms of 2021? Were people experiencing good activities, good life? And my other part of my question is, what do we do to take the second half of the year and just make it as amazing of a 2021 as we possibly can? What would you suggest and recommend?
I think your listenership should hire me, and we'll have a group coaching session. And what we'll do is we'll really structure, like what kind of foods do I really have to eat? What do I really need to do to be healthy? Because if you don't have your health, you're not going to be able to do anything, and you're going to become a burden to yourself and a burden to your family and other loved ones, So, I mean, we all know, we've all had parents that, when they got sick or they did get sick or they started slowing down, really consumed a lot of time, and it isn't like you didn't want to do it, but you kind of didn't plan for it. And so how do you make sense of that so that, you can go forward? So if you don't want to, adopt that gene pool that doesn't play out very well in your family, then you've got to change your constitution. And when you change your constitution, you change your other outcomes, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and socially. So what happened in the first 6 months of this year, I think people were really hopeful, that things were changing, and people they didn't seem like they were as paranoid as the media was making them. And they were starting to make sense of the information that they were getting, of whether that made sense or not, and then how that pieced together, like the information about COVID, the information about, it's just like wearing masks and the whole slew of other things that, we have been told, to do. And, and also it was really great because people who, didn't have the glue, or they had the glue, but they were like going down the same road in a relationship, but they thought, they might have been on parallel roads going in the same direction, But, COVID either brought them together or totally blew them apart. So I think people had that realization about what their relationships are or aren't, and how they relate, to their kids, how they relate in their environment, in their communities. And it was, in each state is different. I mean, it's just like, even now, it's just like there's talk about locking down again. I'm going, oh, no surprise. And so, it's just like, I don't think people are, really buying it anymore. I talk to so many people, on Zoom, and have so many meetings on Zoom with people who are leaders and influencers in other industries. And it always comes back to that conversation. It's just like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up, and so, and then, it's just like, and then we have that whole vaccine thing happening. I read an article, just to say it, I read an article about the Seychelles, and I believe it was the Seychelles, and they had no COVID cases at all until they started vaccinating. And so when they started vaccinating, they started seeing issues with the vaccines that they had, because they're having breakthrough where people are coming down with COVID. So where else are they going to get it? Because you're on an island, and so, and we're seeing more breakthrough cases, in research. I just read something early this morning about, breakthrough cases happening, and, and they're not really being reported, it's just like, this, so we could go into that. And the CDC stopped counting some statistics, and I don't know if it was convenient for them, or not, but it seems like it, because they're not counting the people who they're like looking at what the bad reactions were. And there's something like over 400, 91,000, bad reactions, indoor deaths from the vaccine that, it's just like, and it's going up. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, so people should be really, really mindful about their health and do anything and everything that they can do to be supportive, to be healthy, so they can be with their family, they can do the things they love to do, and they can live the life that they thought they were supposed to have, and they can step it into that and manifest that as their reality.
So do you think the relaxed rules will continue for the second half of the year? Or do you think we're going to revert back because potentially cases will increase? And a follow-up question to that, how do you think that's going to impact us mentally?
Well, I think it's going to be depressing, because you're thinking oh, look, we got to go out and we got to, mingle, all summer long, and then going into the fall. And as soon as November hits, because they don't have a flu season anymore, it's just minimal, and so, it's just like, and, it's like, I heard somebody from the WHO, I think it was, talk, and actually say, well, for our next pandemic, I mean, do they know it? Are they planning it? It's just, because pandemics have a life cycle and they end. But before, when they had pandemics, people had herd immunity because they reached it naturally in the environment. They didn't have vaccines. Well, you have a vaccine that you don't know, it's questionable and it's experimental with a big question mark after it. And people don't own, they're going, well, I didn't have a reaction to it when I took it. It doesn't mean it's not going to cause havoc and create chaos, 2 years down the road, 5 or 10 or 20 years down the road when they come out, with that. So, Bill Gates, I read this and I've heard him say it on a video, that he thought that there was, I don't know where he got his numbers at, but he seems to know a lot before it happens. They expected at least 700,000 accidents before this whole scenario was over. We're getting close. We're over the half mark. We're closing in on 500,000, but, it's just like, I'm concerned. People go oh, the people who are vaccinated have to be careful about the people who aren't vaccinated. I'd rather not be vaccinated, in just my personal opinion, in that case, because if they're having all these breakthrough cases and they really don't know the side effects, we know side effects short term, we know what they are for 3 days, but we don't know what they are for a year or 2 years, things like that. So that to me is are you thinking, do you hear yourself saying that? I mean, really, And I'm not against, I want your listeners to know, I'm not against vaccines. I'm not against the theory of them, but there's a lot of vaccines that are out there that don't have quality, and they were shoddy on the testing portion of it,
Yeah.
and, it's just like, and it's just really important to, do your own research. Don't believe everything that you read on, Facebook, and look up, documented, medical, articles in PubMed, and other sources, because also, when you have to, you can tell I'm from the Midwest and I'm a nonconformist, but, it's just like when I read things I read this great article from the CDC. I wish I would have kept it, and archived it, but I didn't, as they talk about how they present numbers and that the numbers don't always mean what they mean. And I went, wow, that's an interesting open line for that kind of article, and you have to look at if a company wants to have a certain outcome with a certain drug, whatever it is, then they want scientists who are going to be able to manipulate that to that idea, because there's drugs that have been called off the market 5 and 10 and 20 years later because that scientists, they fluffed the information, or they made the numbers work. It's just like when you go to sell a business, this, you're in finance. When you sell a business, you can either appraise for a high number or a low number. Right?
Sure.
And
yeah.
So it's just like, it's the same in statistics. I mean, it's like it is.
Because you're relying on the experts to give you the real information. And I mean, I get it, but you got to take the statistics and the numbers and I guess you just fall upon that. Say, well.
And you got to think your fact checkers don't have any education. They're just reading an article. So if they don't understand what the article is about, then they will, say that you're like, it's partially true.
Right.
You're talking about hydration. It's partially true. And they don't have the wherewithal or the education to really ascertain that. They're just going, in this article, blah, blah, blah. So when I see something from a fact checker, I immediately disbelieve it, and I do my own research.
That I know, and I've always believed that as well, is if you want the real story, you got to kind of do your own research, because one fact checker has their facts set up their way, another one just as credible, but has a completely opposite result. And that's based on the way they approached and what they looked at. So there's no one answer, I feel like, for any of this. But
so, Michael, you got to understand who's paying them.
I don't like to think about, but the reality is that's true.
And there's a huge amount of censorship, on Facebook, which is one place. It's just like I'm on there, but I always say Hail Mary and go light a candle in church, before, I really engage in that. And it isn't like, it's just like, and if you, a Facebook expert told me the other day that if they are censoring you, they funnel down how many people actually can see your useful post. So sometimes they restrict you from being on their live, and if, and then they will also, it's just like, how many engagements did I have last week on a post that was really dynamite? That on LinkedIn, I had like 70 people, like it was a wow moment. And on Facebook, I had 9, and I said, and that's why, when I talked to this person, I said, and he said, well, he goes, what they do is if they have you on their list, is that they funnel down exactly how much you have exposure to other people. And I just think, like, what happened to like the freedom of speech? I mean, that's a whole nother episode. That's a
whole other conversation. We won't get into that.
So, at any rate, if I had to grade the first part of the year, and what I saw is like, I saw people become a little bit more relaxed mentally.
Yeah.
And, so, because things got looser, or the restrictions, the alleged restrictions that were supposed to be restrictions, were in place, people, started going like, well, wait a minute, like, why am I wearing my mask in a car? There's nobody else in here,
Sure.
you know,
Yeah.
and it's just like, it isn't like a wasp, but like once they put their eye on you, they're going like, yep, I'm going to go into the vent. I'm going to get you.
Right.
You know, and so, but I like that people were a little bit more relaxed. And so in places where, and as a chiropractor, you know, in Massachusetts, for instance, chiropractors in Massachusetts are still mandated by the governor to wear your mask while you're working with people, you know. So in chiropractic, we always, you know, bleach those tables, you know, and the headpieces, so that because people's faces was closed, especially during flu season. I mean, there's that just didn't make sense, you know, otherwise. But I'm glad to see that people had that, because I think we're only on the tip of the iceberg of the mental health issue in this country caused by the pandemic, you know, and, you know, and the things that were implemented. Human beings are social. They need contact. They need to be able to talk. You need to be able to have a coffee, a glass of water, whatever it is, with whoever it is, and be able to laugh, you know. And it's just like, we're social beings. And, you know, there's some things I always thought were odd, but that's another show, you know, about this pandemic and about things that they didn't make you do. I mean, I'm just going to mention one. Like, for instance, you know, it's just like they, you know, the way that, you know, coronavirus, which is a virus only, it's not a disease, you know, what happens is, like, you know, a lot of people, when they go buy groceries, what they did is they went and got gasoline. Then they went to the grocery store. So they had their hands on the hose, you know, and you go in the grocery store, they had those little like things that if you put them in your hand and you lit a match next to your hand, about, you know, 45 minutes later, your hand would probably burst into flames. I've seen examples of that on plates, you know, where they actually wash the Perel, that type of stuff, you know, on a plate, and they let it dry, and then, you know, they rinsed it, dried it off, and then they put a match on it, and the plate bursted into flames where the Perel was put down. So it
kind of makes sense, because it's mostly alcohol. So I get that.
It's flammable. So, you know, you got to be mindful. But anyway, going in there, the grocery store, they never mandated anybody to wash their hands. And people's hands are like all over everything. Like when you're picking up their vegetables and those type of things. And and it's just like, if the coronavirus is kind of like a sticky virus, then, you know, and it's on your hands, you know, then you're touching your face when you get in the car and you take your mask off. And, you know, it's just like, you more than likely didn't wash your hands. So I'm thinking, why don't they make you wash your hands, mandate washing your hands when you're going into a grocery store? You know?
Good.
You know, it just would make like total sense to me. And they had all these restrictions in place, which scared the bejesus out of so many people, only to figure out that it didn't stop the coronavirus. It wasn't because the people weren't wearing masks, you know, that the coronavirus got. It's because it's like, you can't, you know, the mask didn't protect you from the coronavirus. It can go right straight through it, you know, and if it can go in, it can go out. You know, it's the same kind of, like, you know, material on both sides.
Yeah.
Unless it's a higher grade mask.
What do you think for the second half of the year? So we're at July 9th right now. How can we approach it and be positive and feel good about ourselves? What advice would you give someone?
Well, I would first say there's nothing we can do about whatever has happened. Right. You know, and so I think the thing to do is you look at and you get a piece of paper out and you make a list of like, okay, so this is what I thought was great about my life in the last 6 months, you know, and this is what's not working. So then if you know what's not working, you can take those not working things and you can take, you know, you can create, you know, accountability for getting those into place in the second half, whatever it is. Like I want to lose 10 more pounds, right? So if I want to do that, and I was successful at a little bit of weight, you know, in the beginning, then I'm going, that's one of my goals then for the second. So how do I do that so it's not painful, you know? And like, how do I, and so I don't feel like I'm beating myself up, you know? And so I go, okay, so I can do other things, because I know if I drink, more water and I stay hydrated, then it's easier for me to lose weight. And my body will actually find its own best weight to be at just by doing that. And so, you just take those action steps going into it, but you got to identify what they are first, and then not be married to them. They don't own you. They're just things that have happened. So if you can put them in a proper place in your psyche, then you go like, okay, I've got these, my next, because I always do things by threes. I do 3 goals I need to accomplish for during the week, and then 3 goals for each day, whether they're business or personal. And then, so if I go, what are my 3 biggest goals? If I want to make 2021 in the second half, on that, emotional, physical, spiritual, mind, body, soul, etc. Then I need to know what I need to do. It's just like, it's like, what can I do? What are solutions for this? If you can't find a solution, you can always, find a coach that can help you work through that, or somebody who can do lifestyle strategy like I do. And it's like, okay, this is where you want to be, well, tell me what you're not willing to do. And I go, and that's why it's not working. So, it's true. I mean, it's just like when you're like, what are you not willing to do? Well, I'm not willing to give up, sweets. Well, then guess what? You're going to have a big struggle, and you're going to compromise your health by doing that. So if, your health isn't important to you, isn't number one important to you, next to your family, and next to your friends and people who you love, then, it's just like there's, I don't take those people in as clients, but but you've got to have a good eye for like, okay, so what is it? And then you got to chunk it down. Like, it's just like, now it's going 6 months. Cause you go like, oh, I can do it next month, or I can do it next month. You put it on the table for the month that you're in.
Yeah.
And so there's a thing that I call, that's called the 21-90-day rule. For most people to change behaviors, it takes up to 8.5 months. That's 265 days. And so, but they can do it as quick as 18 days. It's all about mindset. And so if you pick a behavior that you want to change, like I want to drink half my weight in ounces in water because I need to hydrate, then I look at, well, what does that represent? Like weigh 150 pounds, 75 ounces a day. How many like water things do I have to have? And stuff like that's considered food, like juice. Juice is not water. I don't care if it's made with it or not. It's just like, it's not. So
why is that?
Well, because it's food and your body processes that food. It doesn't process it as water.
There we go.
And so, so like if you have something like iced tea, for instance, and it's not strong tea, but it's just like, it's like normal, like, like medium kind of tea, if you have the tea and you followed it up with a glass of water, then I would say you could count the tea as water, and, but you can't put cream and stuff for like, for those other things like that. And and it's like, and if you're going to do like diet, you go like, okay, so I've got to clean my diet up. What, because you have total control over what goes in your mouth. I mean, if you're just looking at the weight loss thing as an example. So you've got to like, what do I need to cut out? Bread, rice, pasta. I mean, just doing that, increasing your water, and if you want to have a glass of wine with the meal, we're talking maybe a 6-ounce glass of wine, not an 8, and just one. So, for those things. So the 90-day rule is you start out, you pick a behavior that you want to change, and you do that one behavior for 21 days. Mm-hmm. When you're successful at the 21-day mark, then you do it for an additional 90. That will put you up to 111 days, right? And so a lot of people do it quicker. The average amount of days it takes someone to switch and like make it into a habit that you don't think about anymore, is on usually around 66 days. But that rule, it's just like anytime, people hear like, oh, it takes 21 days or 28 days to change a habit. It's not the whole thing, so you got to understand like, what that is, because when people have emotional bad times, they go back to trying eating comfort food because the lizard brain, which is the primitive brain, well, it's going like, oh, go ahead, reward yourself. You deserved it. You've been on this diet for 4 weeks now. You've had this food change. Just go. You can have it just once, but make sure you buy the gallon because it's cheaper. And so
what we talk ourselves into.
I know. I mean, but you hear that, right? It's kind of funny. It's just like, oh, but don't worry about that. It's just like, and then it sits in your refrigerator and you're thinking, I'm just going to have a spoonful. And pretty soon, like in like a week or 2 days, it's gone.
Yeah.
So everything that you did, that you put
Yep.
so much time and energy and effort into improving yourself, goes down the drain rather quickly. I had a client who went on vacation and somebody gave her a free ticket to go to Costa Rica. I went, you lucky girl. And she goes,
Nice.
Dr. Pat, she was a client of mine. She goes, Dr. Pat, can I have a drink or two when I'm down there? And I just said to her, sure, you can do anything you want to do. And I said, but I'm going to ask you. I said, for you, and I said, we did this on a, because you were on a budget. So we figured out how to budget out, the coaching portion of this so that you could still get results. It just took you longer. Instead of getting the results like in 6 weeks, it took you 12 weeks because of doing it. It was a longer program that you enlisted upon, and I said, so you're going to go to Costa Rica, and you're going to eat, drink, and be merry. And I said, you're going to do everything that you did, for 1 week, And so what she did, I said, so I go when you get back, let me know what happened. And she said, you're going to be so proud of me. And she said, it was such a beautiful place. I thought if I had, if I had a drink, I was going to have to want another one, because you're, on vacation and playing.
Sure.
And she said, so I didn't do any. And she goes, I did meditations, I took walks in the nature, and I even hugged a tree. So I always said, when in doubt, hug a tree, and reconnect with nature. She goes, and I even hugged a tree, and so she sent me a picture of that, so that I would have that. But I was so proud of her because it's just like, she knew where she wanted to go. And if you're committed to where you want to go, then you just have to back it up. It's like when I fly to Chicago. I want to end up in Lake Geneva in Wisconsin when I go to conferences. I want to be there by the time I hit there so I can still lay out in the sun.
Sure.
And get a couple hours just to relax and go take a walk to the next town from where the resort is that they're holding this conference at. So, I make myself get up at 5 o'clock in the morning from Boston and leave like super early. So I hit Chicago, and then because you got to hit at the same time the trains are leaving to go up there.
Yep.
And so, and if you're like at planes late or whatever, then you just wait for the next train and you figure out something else to do, like go buy Frango mints or something. And and so that's always worked for me because I always go backwards. Like I want to get into, when I have flown to England, I always took the morning flight out because I want to get there in time for dinner. And I always when I went back to see my, mentor, I always got back there in time to get picked up from the airport and let's go to a restaurant and eat. So, and let's do dinner. So dinner's a big thing for me, or being out at that time and going some fun place like for lunch. But it's taking that little type of planning and thinking ahead, like, what do I really want it to be like? So when people have a hard time keeping their commitments to their health and themselves, then, they you really, really need to have a chat, because you got to take a look at what is it that keeps on blocking you, that, when you're getting to go burst past your ceiling, you sabotage yourself, and that's not fun. So going into making it more positive is just like, you've never had so much support in your life as you have right now. And, there's a lot more coaches on the market. There's a lot more people out there that, have programs that if it resonates with you and it makes sense and it's affordable for you to do it. Because we know the thing that we lack that makes us not successful sometimes is just a simple thing called accountability. And so if you can figure out what that accountability is and what works, then, I helped an author publish who's launching his book very shortly. And, I worked with him, on an accountability basis, like, what do you need to do? Because some of that stuff, when you're launching a book, I have my book, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? Some of that stuff is overwhelming. And you're thinking, how am I supposed to do all this like in 2 days? It's like, why didn't they tell me this a month ago? That kind of thing. you know, so it's just like, so it just keeps, you know, you got, if you have somebody who you can really, you know, pair up with and that can help you go from point A to point C, it's so much more efficient, you know, and it's worth the money to be able to have that so that you can be successful, as you got to feel good about yourself,
Of
you know,
course.
and, you know, and you got to do things that make you happy. You know, it's just like, do good, have fun, and do what makes you happy is a big motto of mine.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so we have a couple minutes left. I don't want to miss out on this opportunity because you mentioned earlier, a couple seconds ago, about take courses and programs and learn. You have a course coming up fairly soon. And so I want to share with our subscribers and audience a little bit about that, how to subscribe to it and join it. Can you share that?
I can. It's, you know, I am doing, I have 3 webinars coming up that I gave you the link for. So if people would like to come to that, you know, webinar, it's free. And the idea behind the course is called Motivational Biohacks. That's the webinar. The course is called Be Stronger Than Medicine. Because what a lot of people lack, people are always constantly trying to put the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
And, you know, and they forget to go back to basics. So they're going like, I want the magic pill, but there's no magic pill. So the idea is to look at what your foundation is, know your foundation, know where the crack is, and know how to fix it. And so, you know, and then you can go into something bigger, because talking about it's a 4-week course. It's on a Wednesday, you know, it's at 12 noon for the course itself, you know, and I'm going to give it, I'm teaching that live, so that when, you know, people have questions, you know, or concerns, they can be addressed the day of or the beginning of the next week. Or they'll be on the Facebook group is called Be Stronger Than Medicine. And I'll be opening that group up for public, you know, for people to join probably around like 2-3 weeks before the actual course. But the webinar is just a taster. It gets you like in that thinking mode. You know, and so in the course is, you know, you'll have the link for the course and you have the link for the webinar. And so, you know, and I invite people to come because, you know, you've got to take responsibility for those basic parts. Because if you get the glue for that, you know, I always wondered why there's so many older people that are still alive today, you know, and they're in pretty good health. Mm-hmm. And, you know, my mother passed away when she was 95, but she didn't pass away because she was in poor health. She passed away because she was in an accident, you know, and she had a head trauma, you know, and a transport vehicle, but no less, but she didn't, you know, like she was still living by herself and taking care of herself. And there's a lot of people who do that. And so, but they, you know, when they grew up, their food was automatically organic. Because, you know, you didn't have, you know, nasty fertilizers and chemicals and pesticides and, you know, and like glycophosphates that, you know, create cancers. A lot of them are carcinogenic. So you have to look at what your exposure is, and no one taught you really how to use them. People just spray liberally all over the place. You know, so I always wonder when I look at, you know, someone who's 92, you know, who's like in their late 80s and they're like 75 and they're like, look like they're 60. I mean, God bless them. I mean, it's just like, but they have, and you're going, oh, it's their gene pool. Well, your genes only express themselves based upon what's going on in your environment. Right. So if you have a bad environment and you have bad food, then whatever your family had, you're more than likely going to express. So it's making taking those things and going like, what is it that I can do that's not going to really be, it's going to be overwhelming and it's going to stress me out. You know, so that this is the course for those people who want to get, you know, the thumbs up and kind of going like, you know, gosh, what are you doing? You look really good. You know, and it's just simple, lovely things to be healthy, to be happy, to be vibrant, you know, and move, because, you know, it's just a nice package for that to happen.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And I will have the links and how to subscribe and join you. I'll have that all in the body of these podcasts so people can sign up. And we are at just past the half-hour mark, and Dr. Pat, it's a pleasure to have you on. I think we have you back on in August. I think we do.
What day is that?
I don't remember, but I will have the link all set up, and we'll come back with more content and worthwhile information that you can share with everybody. And That's all I know.
Well, my branding is Ask Dr. Pat. You can see it in the show notes. So if you have a question, feel free to reach out to Michael, reach out to me. If you have an idea that you would like, perhaps for us to definitely pinpoint and target for the fall time, for the August going into the fall, the end of the summer, like how do I detox after having all these cookouts, things like that. We can address that, and so that, you can get the best results in the shortest period of time.
Beautiful. Dr. Pat, thank you again. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
For our subscribers and listeners and viewers, thank you for your support. Please share this content with whoever you feel could benefit from these type of conversations, and make sure to subscribe so that you can continue to be informed. Have a great day and a wonderful weekend, and please stay safe. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody.